Hi guys, have you ever uttered the words, "That's not fair"? Nah, come on, let's be honest, we've all done it. Even the grown-ups have done it. Maybe you've done it a wee bit since Friday, since the announcement that restrictions were not to be lifted in Glasgow, that Glasgow is to stay in Tier 3. You've been following the rules, you've been wearing face masks, keeping out of people's houses, washing hands, keeping social distance, and still in Tier 3, still not able to have those kind of simple pleasures. And you know, sometimes life has a habit of being unfair like that. You don't do anything wrong, and yet you kind of end up with life being a bit rubbishy. And you know, that happened with Joseph. Poor Joseph didn't do anything wrong. Now, if you remember last week, he was in the house of Potiphar and he was the head slave. And he'd worked his way up. And life was getting a bit better for Joseph. Now, you could argue that previously, before having ended up in the well, you could kind of understand why that had happened. But what was to happen to Joseph next really truly wasn't fair, because he genuinely did nothing wrong. Potiphar was married, and Potiphar's wife took a bit of a fancy to Joseph, because Joseph was really quite good looking. And she asked Joseph out. Now, 10 Commandments hadn't been written yet, but Joseph knew that Potiphar's wife was married, and that meant not to go there. And he said that to Potiphar's wife. Except Potiphar's wife didn't stop there. She kept asking him out on a date, and kept asking. And Joseph kept saying no. And eventually Potiphar's wife kind of got fed up with this and went to Potiphar and accused Joseph of asking her out. It was an out and out lie. It hadn't happened. And do you know what happened to poor Joseph? He ended up in prison. He's gone back down. He's actually ended up lower than he was when he first became a slave in Potiphar's house. Except the Bible tells us that God was with Joseph even in prison. Remember I said last week, I said there was a plan? Well, there was very much a plan. Joseph actually ended up in charge of a group of prisoners. And two of the prisoners that were in his charge ended up troubled by a dream. One of them was the king of Egypt, the Pharaoh's cupbearer. Don't know what he'd done to annoy the king, but he'd ended up in prison. And he had a dream that troubled him. And he went to Joseph, and Joseph said, "Well, tell me the dream." And the cupbearer said, "Well, on my head are 3 vines of grapes, and they're getting poured into a glass." And Joseph says, 3 days' time, you're going to get released. You'll be back as the king's cupbearer. There was somebody else in prison, and it was a baker, and he was troubled by a dream. And Joseph again said, "Tell me your dream, I'll explain. Well, God will explain it through me." And the baker said, "Well, I've got 3 loaves of bread that are on my head, and the birds are eating away at the next one." He says, "Well, each loaf of bread, I'm afraid, represents a day. And well, a wee bit different for you. Your head's kind of going to get chopped off." Well, do you know what? 3 days passed, and both those dreams came to fruition. And the cupbearer said, "Oh, thank you, Joseph. It's so good to see that." I don't think the baker said that somehow. But anyway, Joseph said, "Well, remember me. Tell the king of Egypt." Well, guess what? The cupbearer forgot, didn't bother. He was busy enjoying his life and freedom. And so poor Joseph was to stay stuck in that prison cell. And we'll leave it there. We'll pick it up next week. But you know, really important point here, folks, and it is really important. Life really can be unfair. It has a habit of throwing curveballs at us. And right across, it might be watching a football team and the result doesn't go the way we expect it to go. It could be something more serious. We kind of put the effort in and work and don't get the credit that we maybe deserve. Or possibly you're in class and the whole class are talking, you're trying to get on with your work, and yet you end up kind of getting punished in alongside that. These things, sadly, do happen. But you know, I'm going to finish on hope. I'm not going to have this as a downbeat learning together. Not had one yet, and I don't plan on starting. There's a wonderful passage in the Bible from a book called Jeremiah. Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11, where God says to Jeremiah, I know the plans I have for you, plans that mean you no harm. Do you know what, guys? See, when life is that wee bit rubbishy and it's just not going the way you want it, and it's really quite difficult, cling on. Cling to God, because there is a greater plan. And do you know that old saying? You've maybe heard it. What doesn't kill you, it'll make you stronger. You know, it's actually true. It does. God has a way of using the kind of rubbishy experiences, might not be for a while yet, might be further down the line, and using them to real positives. So guys, life is maybe a bit unfair. You're maybe feeling it, particularly since Friday. But you know what? God is still there, and cling on. Doesn't prevent the difficult times happening. But, oh my, how good and how much better life is with God and plans that mean us no harm. Guys, let's come together in prayer. Let's pray. Loving God, we give you thanks that there is a plan for each one of us. A plan that means us no harm. That when life can be a bit rubbish, a bit unfair, you are still there with us. Help us to remember that and to cling on to you and to keep following your way as Joseph did. Help us in this coming week, O Lord. Amen. Guys, have an absolutely super week, and next week is the final look at Joseph. See you next week. Bye.